MC, welcome to Millionaire University. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today. It sounds like we're going to have a lot of really cool stuff to share with our listeners. So thanks for coming on and spending the time with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. And I know eventually we're going to get to have another conversation. If people are listening to this, go find my episode over on Cashflow Ninja. So that just kind of gives us a little intro. You have your own podcast, you have a brand that's centered around this whole concept of cash flow. So give us a little rundown of your business, your journey as an entrepreneur, and some of the highlights that we need to know that have gotten you to where you're at right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm originally from South Africa. So I grew up in a very interesting time in South Africa's history. So I still remember as a young man when Nelson Mandela was released from prison. And
Wow.
then we went from the apartheid regime into a new form of government. There was elections, and they had a new system of government, new constitution too. It was kind of wild, crazy times. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was a time filled, with a lot of uncertainty. There's obviously a lot of fear. And people didn't know what was going to happen the next day because it's pretty crazy when you live through it. Having not living, I've lived through something like that, which was a gift really for me because, when it comes to money, building wealth, building businesses and investing, I mean, just think of just all the uncertainty that's there and that
Hmm.
entrepreneurs, business owners, and investors face constantly, right? So, fear, madness of crowds, which plays into that too. I saw that firsthand as a young man. So, when people were fighting over toilet paper in, stores in 2020, I wasn't surprised. I was
This is a
like,
walk in the park.
yeah, I'm like, I've seen all of this stuff. People don't know how, mad like crowds behave when people start to panic. It's all,
Hmm.
all rational thinking and behaviors out the window.
Hmm.
It's all out the window. And as a business owner, as an investor, that served me well. I came to the United States in 2001, backpack, a suitcase, a couple of $100, sense of humor, and a sense of adventure. And I ended up playing in a sports league here up until 2007. So while I was traveling and pursuing a career in just sports, I was the guy on the team bus or the team plane reading books. I love history. I love economics. And I came across the book Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and completely changed my paradigm of how I was thinking about money, building wealth, and how to start a business, how to invest. And I took action right away. Within the first 6 months, I bought my first investment property and I put some tenants in it. I collected the rent. I paid all of the bills. And at the end of the month, I had money left over. And I'm like, wow, cash flow, just
Yeah.
like in the book. This is crazy. And then, of course, I'm like, well, how many times can I do this? Because this is going to be fun. And then, of course, school starts, right?
Hmm.
Shocker, sometimes tenants don't pay rent. Shocker, sometimes tenants damage your property. And extra shocker is sometimes they do both. So the school really started there for me, and I was trying to build my real estate business at that time, and just building it, and just through the sports and real estate, I started to meet a lot of very interesting people. In my network at that stage, I wasn't really employable because I was traveling all the time playing sports, but I was introduced to someone that was a real estate investor. And we started talking, and he's like, "Oh, you're interested in real estate too?" I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, I just bought my first property." He's like, "Oh, so you're like, okay, well, you take action." So we were talking, and then he said, "You know what? If you're not traveling for sports and you're in town, I've got a real estate business. You can, we do a lot of multifamily. You can just jump in and we'll find something for you to do." And having read Rich Dad Poor Dad, one of the lessons in that book was the rich don't work for money, they work to learn. I'm like, absolutely. I mean, this would be great. So he ended up being like his family. He ended up being like a third generation kind of legacy kind of family, where they had a family business and they had a family office type of structure, just like the ultra wealthy do in the United States. So the family offices are just private wealth management firms that manages the wealth of a particular family, usually $50 million and up in net worth. $100 million and up, you definitely have a family office set up at that point, and then
Mm-hmm.
also a massive real estate portfolio. So I just started working for him, picking up trash at these multifamily buildings, and eventually did maintenance, eventually did apartment turnovers. I ran a construction crew, did leasing, started with property management, went into bookkeeping and collecting rents, and eventually managing around 500 plus units, and got my broker's license. So I learned the business right from the ground up. So when I drive past a multifamily unit building, I know exactly what's going on there. I know what happens during the day, what happens at nighttime, what happens on the weekend, who stops by, who doesn't stop by, what the complaints are. I kind of have a pretty good idea of what happens there just because of that experience. So cash flow was a big central theme for me there. He then also, we used to have these lunches, and one day he had he's CPA, he's lawyer, and actually he's an insurance advisor for lunch. And I went to lunch with them, and these are all folks working in their family office. And I didn't understand what was really discussed. And I was like, oh, I know what the lawyer's doing. I kind of have an idea what the CPA is doing. What's the insurance guy doing here? And then I started to see how the ultra wealthy build banking systems leveraging life insurance. And after that lunch, I said to him, like, I don't, I don't understand what I just witnessed here. Please explain that to me. And he's like, well, it's very simple. We have our families operating businesses where we make our money. Then we put all of our money in life insurance, creating this banking system. Then we leverage our life insurance and buy real estate with it. And we just do it over and over and over. Which was even more shocking was that their family were they were shareholders in a private bank. And I'm like, but you guys have a bank. Why don't you put your money there? He goes, no, that's where other people put their money. And then we keep playing the same. We play the same game like we do in our family office kind of structure. And at that time, I reread Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's book, and I started to realize too. It just hit me like a light bulb. Is like a lightning bolt. A light bulb went off. That all the liabilities on this person's financial statement, that this example that he shared in the book, is someone else's assets. And it just came back to the bank. So all of the bank's assets. So I started looking at this and going, you got to be kidding me. I just had lunch and learned about this banking system. Now I'm rereading, Robert Kiyosaki's book. And when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And then, I found Nelson Nash's Becoming Your Own Banker. So that whole kind of like month, it was about a month or 2 months that this happened. I also started to realize that one of the things that Nelson Nash teaches, that was a great mentor of mine, is that, MC, you should be in the business that you're in, but you should also be in the banking business. You should always be in two businesses. So I started doing that with my real estate business that really helped it and exponentially helped grow that. And then I started to teach that. And in 2015, I started Company Producers Wealth. We operate in all 50 states. We teach this and we help business owners and investors implement and execute infinite banking and build out this banking system for them. And then also, as you mentioned, I have a podcast, Cashflow Ninja. As I started that Producers Wealth 10 years ago, the following year, I had a passion project just talking to a lot of our clients because they were doing really cool stuff from, real estate to gold and silver to coffee farms to, all kinds of stuff. And it got a life of its own. We were downloaded in 180 countries over millions of times. So, and it really resonated with people. So we still interview the best minds in business and investing on Cashflow Ninja.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. There's so much to unpack there. I know you gave us like the whole strategy in a few minutes, but I want to really get into the nitty-gritty of what that looks like. And it's so funny. Rich Dad Poor Dad it's not an underrated book. It's really helped a lot of people generate a lot of wealth, but it's one that I have a beef with it a little bit because the title doesn't tell you how powerful the book is, right? Like it's an intriguing title,
Yeah.
but it took me so long. I mean, I had been years and years into entrepreneurship until I was like, okay, I've heard enough about this book. I've kind of had it on the bookshelf for a long time. I finally read it and I was like, man, this is one that everybody should have to read in the very beginning because you can learn from so many different things how to make money, how to start some cash flow. But really, that sets you up, that and other books similar to it, with really how to create wealth and how to generate long lasting income. And I was like, man, if I had read this, there's so many mistakes that I wouldn't have made as I started making a lot of money that would have helped me to really never run out and never stop making money. Which, if you're only just relying on the business, the income stream, and then that's what you live on, you really limit yourself and cut yourself off. So, I want to hear a little bit more about, like, what are the key components of a successful cash flow strategy? I know we have the basically have your own banking system, but even on a very simple level, what would you recommend? A lot of our listeners are just getting started in business. They're really beginning that first cash flow in the, in the very early stages. So what do you recommend there?
Yeah, and the one thing that I would also say to the book is that they kind of in the book he kind of blends two different skill sets together, and that's the entrepreneur, the business owner, crushing it and making income and coming up with a business idea, and that's one particular skill set.
Mm-hmm.
The wealth building and investing kind of part of it, that is another different skill set. You
So
would
true.
find people in the world of just wealth creation that are really good in business, very, very good in business. But as an investor, the skills that actually make them really good business owners and entrepreneurs, it doesn't transfer over to the investing part, and they end up losing almost everything because they're like, but I mean, like the wealth building thing, I'm really good at this business thing. Yeah, but it's not investing and the big picture. So I would say it's two completely different skill sets. People that can make a lot of money. The second part of that is actually how to hold on to it and protect it and then multiply. Two completely different skill sets. So that's the first thing I want to just differentiate for all of your listeners. To not blend those two together because they're two completely separate things. And
Yeah.
when you're just getting started out, especially as a business owner. Now I'm speaking to the business owners and how to kind of leverage the system, and I'll bring in how the investors can do it too. When you're starting out with a business, unless you come from a rich family or have a rich uncle, most of us are all in because we have to be. We don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yep.
So you're all in. Your resources, time, money, everything is into this. And at that stage too, by the way, when you start, you look like a broke person on paper because
Mm-hmm.
technically you are. You're all in on this one thing. So you don't get a lot of advice at that stage from financial advice, legal advice, tax advice, and so forth, because you're not
Yeah.
really anybody's perfect client at that stage, right? But as you're just grinding and it's late nights, early mornings, blood, sweat, and tears, the first thing that happens is it survives. You're like, oh, so I'm not going to go bankrupt. This is great. Or have to sleep on couches. And then the second piece is like, oh, this thing is actually getting legs and it's actually like becoming profitable. And then it starts to grow. And now you're generating and making money,
Mm.
right? Which is great. Well, now what are some of the advice that you would get from people at that stage when you're actually making finally like good money? The business is off the ground. So now financial advisor sits down with you and say, all right, you've done a great job, really good job, like building this business. Let's diversify outside of your business a little bit. So what happens at that point? You hand over capital from your business, which you've used to now grow your business. You lose complete control over it. You give it to a financial advisor. And what do? They put it in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, other people's businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Market. And I love Apple. I'm recording this on an Apple device. But Tim Cook and Apple doesn't need like my capital that I'm generating in my business to grow their business. My own business needs it, right? It's kind of insanity for me to look at it that way. That you're just now funding other people's businesses and providing liquidity. The second piece then comes because you've lost control of the money that you've generated in your business and it's now quote unquote diversified. Well, how do you run your business? Like there's 4 seasons of cash flow, right? I talk about summer is your highest revenue month. Winter is your lowest. In the summer, it's pretty easy to run your business with fixed overheads, payroll, you know, technology and investing. Pretty easy to run a business then. Winter, not so much. So you go from the summer, the business starts to slow down. You go into the fall, which leads you to the winter. And how do you get out of the winter to the spring? Well, that's usually when you need capital too, not to just run the business, but you need it to run new marketing campaigns, hire employees, technology, and so forth. So you need money there too to get you to the spring, to get you back to the summer. So what ends up happening? Well, you're always going back to the bank for a line of credit, or you beholden to another institution just to get access to some money, or you might even be back on credit cards just to run your business.
Yeah.
And then your business is always going to need money, hiring more employees as it's growing, bringing in technology. Now everybody's bringing in AI. That costs money. So where does that come from? It puts you back in the exact same situation. So for a business owner at that stage, it's like, yeah, you do have to diversify at some point, but how do you diversify without starving the business from money, right? And this is how you can build a system. So we talk about infinite banking and building out this banking system. So what it is use insurance, a very specifically designed insurance policy, life insurance policy. So it's all the terrible words that will put people off. And but I will share with you why it's one of the most powerful strategies and why the richest families in the United States have done it for 170 years. It's a very specifically designed life insurance policy where it's designed for living benefits, not just the death benefit. It's designed so that the cash value in the policy is designed for savings, not just the death benefit. So the majority of your money, usually around 80% of what you put into that policy, goes to the savings part of it. So why would you put it in there? Because the money's guaranteed. It's guaranteed to grow. All tax-free. It gets dividends, which is profit sharing in a mutual life insurance company. These companies have generated profits consecutively every single year for 170 years. I can't even think of, 5 companies that have been on the New York Stock Exchange for over 100 years. So they've got a long track record of making good on promises. It also has a death benefit for you as the business owner for, succession planning for the business and for your family. And then the other thing is you can access capital in the life insurance policy through a policy loan. So you're not taking and drawing money from the policy like with a savings account. You're collateralizing it, meaning, you're setting up a line of credit secured by the money that's inside of that life insurance policy. So a good example is you could do a similar thing with a bank. Where you put $100,000 in a CD, you go to the bank where that money's locked up for 12 months. And now you ask the banker, can I get a loan, secured by that $100,000 CD? And the banker would say, yeah, I'll give you a loan, 90% of that. So I'll give you $90,000 at a certain rate. That money is still growing in that CD. But now you were able to establish a loan secured by it, right? So you do the same thing. Which there is an interest portion of it, but you could set this policy up outside of your business, build this up, and now all of a sudden, your business at any given point in time has access to money without going to a bank and getting a proctology exam. You just can access now the money that's inside of that policy to reinvest in the business, manage cash flow, and then also invest in new employees, marketing campaigns, and so forth. The other thing that you can also do as part of kind of like a family banking strategy, now we get to like the big picture, what they do in family offices, is everybody in your family can have these policies on them. It's all together in a trust, a family trust, and the family trust, which has this quote unquote family bank now, finances everything that the family needs, whether it's education, whether it's homes that you're buying, whether it's other businesses that you invest in, other investments, everything can be financed from there. And also, it's the bank for your business. So I'll give a personal example. So earlier this year, Producers Wealth, my business, needed some money. We brought on full-time employees. We wanted to invest in a new marketing campaign, and we also wanted to invest in technology. So we got a loan from the family trust. The family trust issued the loan. There's a note. There's an interest rate. It's all legal and legitimate. And then my business got the money from the family bank. We were able to use that, hire employees, invest in the marketing campaign, bring in AI technology. And then as we're generating profits in the business, we are now repaying the loan to the family trust with interest. So let's just say if you take a policy loan from the insurance company, and let's just say they charge you 5%, you're earning 6% in dividends right now, and you would loan the money through your trust to your business, you can charge your business 10%. And in this case, if it was $100,000, just simple math, in this example, the family trust would make a spread of 5%. So the family trust makes a profit of $5,000. My business got money without having to go to the bank, went to my family bank, got money, and was able to grow the business and generate profits that way. So it's one pool of money doing multiple things for you simultaneously. I'll just finish with this. As an investor, you could do the exact same thing. I talked a lot towards, how to use this as a business owner. Investor, your business is building out your investment portfolio. So you always have access to money to build out your investment portfolio, utilizing the structure. And you could set up a banking system like this, where instead of the banks, which would make all the money, if I just had to do it with them, it now stays in my family's pool of money. And my family now gets the benefit from the system that we've created and built, just like a bank.
And you mentioned like this isn't something that's just a new fad. This has been in existence. A lot of like multi-generational wealth is created this way because instead of moving that money or pulling that money from someone else, like you said, and investing in their business, investing in their stocks, you're continuously investing the profit from your business into that family trust. You're growing that long-term asset, and it's all yours. So I think that's really cool. And I'm sitting here with light bulbs going off like, yeah, duh, why don't I borrow against myself? And I think sometimes we get so stuck in the small-minded thinking of like, should it be an LLC? And where should the cash like flow through the business and flow into my personal? And then you kind of level up to this place where you're thinking, okay, well, they can be separate, but they can still feed each other. They can still take care of each other. And in turn, we're just making more revenue that we're putting into our pocket. So I love that. It's like fascinatingly unique, but it's not rocket science, right? It's just kind of like, duh, why aren't we all building our cash flow this way?
It's like 170 years families have been doing this. And,
Wow.
once I got exposed to a family office kind of like strategy or concept by my friend, like we're talking about 20 plus years ago, I was fascinated by it because it's kind of funny that everybody asks me, and now I've really studied family offices now for 25 years. And in the past 5 years, I've really just went down every single family office rabbit hole. Why? There's more wealth in family offices now globally than private equity and venture capital combined.
Mm.
Combined.
Wow.
So people don't understand how much money resides in family offices. Well, what do they do in there? I just shared with you exactly a strategy which they do, because the next thing becomes, well, what do they do in there? What are the secrets? Like, pull back the curtain, tell me what they do. Well, they focus on tax efficiency, which is you will never, ever, ever build and amass large sums of wealth if you do not understand that taxes is your biggest threat.
Mm.
As you're building your business as a business owner, as you're building out your wealth as just a wealth creator, if you don't combat that, then you're putting yourself on the opposite side of a compound interest equation, which is working against you. And everybody knows, hey, I just got to put myself on the right side of this. I mean, that's, again, not rocket science, right? It's just how the world works. Compounding efforts, compounding energy, compounding money, anything that compounds multiplies exponentially. Well, why are you putting yourself on the wrong side of a compound interest equation, which is taxes? So play the tax game well. There is a code. Again, not fun things to study. But taxes is the big thing. And then efficiency of cash flows through your personal, your business, and your investing economy. So you just have to be as efficient as you can be in all those areas. And that's why,
Mm.
for myself, it's like, no, I mean, I want to know as much as I can and study as much as I can on taxes, on life insurance, because I saw how it's used in family offices, real estate, businesses. I mean, these are incredible just wealth vehicles. So in combination, in a very efficient strategy, very, very powerful stuff.
Yeah. So if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm starting to generate some cash flow, like you said, most people will go to a financial planner. They're going to invest in the stock market, mutual funds, bonds, what have you. In this strategy, you're saying, like, what is the first step? Are we going and we're setting up this life insurance policy? And is that cash? And I know that this is very nuanced with the tax, being very intentional with taxes. But is this, when you're doing the life insurance policy, is this post-tax money? Is this pre-taxed income? And then maybe just speak a little bit to like how that all kind of comes out in the wash so that you're continuously being really smart about how because it's not tax evasion, right? It's just being very strategic and on the right side of the equation. But yeah, maybe just like the beginning pieces of the strategy. If our listeners are hearing this saying, okay, I do have some money. I was thinking about going and investing it in this or that. Where do they begin? Like, what are the next steps?
Yeah, if you're a business owner generating, $500,000, let's just say per year in gross revenue, this is something that you should be looking at. Over 1 million in gross revenue, no brainer. And how you do it is, and it's a great question. This is post tax. So as a business owner, this is why it's, being from South Africa, I always remind people here about this. When you have a business in the United States, this is one of the best countries in the world from a tax standpoint to own and operate a business. It's just,
Like,
it's fantastic. So why? Businesses solve problems and challenges in the marketplace through products and services. And, like there are a ton of them. The government doesn't want to do that. So they incentivize business owners to do that. So yeah, with proper tax strategies as a business owner, you're going to pay the lowest amount of taxes, to begin with in this tax game. Now, this is post-tax money. So the money going into this policy is money that's after taxes. Why would you do that? It's part of the diversification strategy too. Now, there are a ton of business strategies, which that is a separate podcast on its own because we do business planning, where you could set up a business bank for your business. You can fund buy sells on the owners. There's key person strategies and incentives. How do you hire the best A players? How do you keep them? There's a lot of different stuff, different types of strategies there that we also do. But the big part, the easy part in the beginning is, take some money, post-tax, put it in this policy. Now you're diversifying outside of your business, because that's the other thing. Before you know it, it's probably 90% plus of your net worth's going to be tied to your business, which we see all the time. That's kind of the average, by the way. So you take some money, you put it into something that's now outside of the business. You're diversifying, but you're not starving the business of money. So when you need
mm,
money, you just go to your own quote unquote bank or your family bank and you access the cash to keep feeding the business, to keep growing it. Um, so that's what I would do. It's post-tax. Once you do pay taxes on the money, and then it goes into the policy, and once it's inside of the policy, you'll never pay taxes on that money again. It's
mm.
guaranteed to grow. It's tax-free, and through proper strategies, you'll never pay taxes on it again. You can, even as a business owner, for a plan B, draw tax-free income from that life insurance policy for retirement.
Yeah.
I have discussions with business owners and they go, we talk about exit strategies and they go, well, I'll just sell my business. That's how I'm going to retire. I'll sell it to the kids or I'll sell it to someone else. Like, well, do you know that 70% of businesses that are listed for sale never sell ever?
Mm.
So, but let's be hypothetical. What if you are in the 30%? What's your business worth? Is somebody else going to pay you that for what it's worth? How are they going to pay you? What are the terms? Are you going to get some money up front? Will it be seller financing? I don't know. So you don't have we don't know what we don't know 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. So what if you set up this business kind of, or this bank for yourself and this family bank and you have this business strategy where you're diversifying outside of your business, and you know with certainty there's going to be a certain amount of money inside of that policy that you will be able to draw tax-free income from retirement. Does that kind of like clarify a roadmap for you? And then when you do sell your business, you walk away with this policy which you can draw tax-free income from and millions of dollars that you sold your business for. I mean, that's a
Mhm.
position personally I would rather be in than figuring out, ooh, maybe or maybe not I'll sell my business. And by the way,
Yeah.
the selling to your children too, only 30% of businesses go from Gen 1 to Gen 2, 15 from Gen 2 to Gen 3. And I know this is counter like information to what you're seeing marketing right now. Everything is the most sexiest thing, on the internet right now is buying businesses, right? Everybody's got a course on buying businesses, but I can tell you that most businesses are not even sellable or viable.
Mm.
Unfortunately, that's just the reality. So let's take unknown variables out of the equation. Again, let's get some clarity, let's get some certainty, let's get some predictability. And the most important thing is let's get some control for you as the
Mm.
business owner.
Yeah. It is a hot topic right now with buying and selling businesses, and I'm like, we've had even guests on here who do that, and I think it's a great option. I think it's a little higher risk, and I think you have to have a different level of grit and tolerance for that.
Yep.
There's a lot of risk that's out of your control. But that being said, I do feel like, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who has seen behind the curtain of a lot of businesses, there are a lot of things. I even had a friend who's going to buy a business once recently, and I said, okay, it looks really good, like they've been able to do this, but when you step in there, there's going to be so many variables that are not going to translate well to a new owner. So even if everything's in working order, as you get in there and want to make changes, sometimes it's like it'd be better to start over from scratch and build something new. So yeah, not to totally like diss on those who build their entire fortune off of buying and selling businesses. It's definitely viable, but I love this because I think there is a little less risk and there's just a little more control, like you said, in putting the cash flow, putting the investment money where we know it's going to do something and it's not really going to be like at the risk of the market or whatever. So, and I even want to ask that this is a little more of the nitty gritty questions when you talk about putting it into a life insurance policy like that, where it's, you're guaranteed not to lose anything, right? Because it's not really out there on the stock market
Yep.
traditionally. How is it generating interest? Just for those who are listening who are not familiar with financial products like this, because I think most will hear life insurance and they're like, what, how do you make money on a life insurance policy? So maybe just give us a little insight into that.
Absolutely. Great question. So the specific product is a dividend paying whole life insurance policy with a mutual life insurance carrier. So it
Mhm.
is not you. There's a lot of exotic products in the life insurance space. So a lot of people have heard of like IULs, Index Universal Life, or VULs, Variable Universal Life. These are all products that's tied to the stock market, which then the fees in them are really high. And the way that they're designed too is that their insurance cost is lower, but every single year as you age, your insurance cost goes up in them.
Mm.
So they also were only created in the 1980s. This is kind of like coincided with the 401k design by Ted Benna. And this was when the party was on, and we saw. Most people don't know this too. So it's good to just bring context to this. Most Americans did not invest in the stock market prior to 1980. It was only doctors and lawyers. And if you look at all the old Wall Street movies, where stockbrokers were cold calling, all of the doctors in a specific area, it was only the top 5% of income earners in the United States that actually have money in the markets.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah. So, and if you think about it, then Ted Benham, which I've interviewed him twice, came up with this strategy of the 401k. And the reason what they wanted to do that was to retain employees and obviously figure out how they can keep them longer at a company, more loyal, because people started to, pensions were starting to at that stage be not as attractive as it used to be because they changed how they were structured. So he came up with this this vehicle. Anyway, now every single American was investing in the stock market through a 401k. So you had one of the biggest booms ever in the history, which led to the 87 market crash, right? But everybody came in. Those products were designed there. So how does life insurance work? How do you make money? And where did this come from? So in a dividend-paying whole life insurance policy with a mutual life insurance carrier, it's been around for 170 years compared to, what is it, 40 years for the other product. 170 years this has been around. A lot of these mutual insurance companies had an angle to it where it was very community based. Like, one carrier in Pennsylvania where I lived basically originated through Quaker businessmen, and
Mm.
that Quakers wanted to protect their businesses and their families, and they came together, and that was the origin story of this life insurance carrier. So when you put money into the policy, it has a certain guaranteed rate that it's supposed to grow, like 3%, right? So where does that come? That comes from savings vehicles, very conservative, kind of like bonds, different types of bonds that's being traded. So they can generate an interest for you and guaranteed a 3% over the life of the policy. But dividends is the second way that you get paid in this policy. Dividends is profit sharing. So dividends is you participating in the profits of this mutual life insurance carrier. Mutual life insurance carriers are different than stock ones. Stock insurance carriers and like AIG and Lincoln Financial and so forth, they're listed on the stock exchanges. So you could technically become a shareholder of any one of those companies by just buying their stock. And they're
Mm.
managing their companies on behalf of their shareholders, which are the stockholders. So they have to also, invest in risky things to get higher returns and profits so that more people buy their stock, right? It becomes more attractive. Where mutual insurance companies, the only way that you can benefit or participate in the profitability is by owning a whole life policy with them. So that's, and again, people would say, well, they've been profitable for a very long time. Yeah. 170 years. Some of them paid out dividends every single year consecutively for 170 years. During the American Civil War, which you had two separate countries with two presidents, two Congress, two
Mm.
militaries, two different types of currencies, greenbacks and graybacks. You had, you had the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. You had World War I, World War II, economic booms, busts, the Great Depression, the 71 when Richard Nixon took the world off the gold standard, 74 the U.S. petrodollar deal was cut. Then you went through the 2000s with the dot-com boom and bust, the housing market boom and bust, in 2008, 2009. They've been profitable every single year through any of the scenario because they can manage their companies in a way that they could look 100 years ahead and they don't have to take any risk. So they own a ton of real estate. They're invested in a ton of businesses, a lot of conservative things, and their insurance is a very profitable business, right? That's why
Mm.
Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is one of the biggest insurance companies in the United States. So that's how they generate profits, and that's why they continue to generate profits. It's just, their risk tolerance is much lower than what's going on in Wall Street and with those insurance carriers. So they can just manage their business or their company on behalf of the policyholders, the shareholders.
Mm. Interesting. Okay, so now I'm curious, and thank you for answering that, just giving clarity to that. I've been diving into this so much in the past year. My dad passed away unexpectedly last year, so my mom and I have just been getting this like unofficial master's degree in financial literacy, which is
Yep.
sadly, we have the best country to build businesses and make a lot of money, and not a lot of people understand how to work the system and that makes it sound shady, but how to leverage the system and the way that it's created. So
Yep.
we're having to kind of learn all of this. So I appreciate the answer and the knowledge. So the question that came to mind as you finished that out is like, okay, this is fascinating. I love this. I love understanding how you can use these life insurance policies to continue to have your money grow. And then we're talking so much about kind of containing and controlling our wealth growth. Do you diversify in any other way? Or how do we kind of level up the income outside of even just the life insurance? Or is that pretty much it?
No, it's so operating businesses is one. Then your life insurance is your banking and your plan B, basically, right? Because
Hmm.
you'll be able to pull income from there tax free. If if you need it. So it's nice to have that. Most people don't have a plan B, right? And then real
Mhm.
estate. I've been a real estate investor for 25 years. I love real estate. I'm invested in historic resorts too, oil and gas. There's a lot of alternative assets that I invest in. Um, and I would just say too, you start, if you're starting and building your business, that's your main focus, and then you diversify into the life insurance to keep feeding that business and keep growing that business, and eventually, then yeah, there's a time and a place where you do start to diversify in other projects. I like to directly invest with partners, instead of just writing a check and handing it over to someone that I am hoping is doing something better with it than I
Yeah.
would have done it. So yeah, so I love real estate. I know real estate. I understand it. That's why I'm still invested in it, and having been involved for 25 years. So for me, I understand that business too. And but yeah, you should have many different income streams. And look, and if you're a business owner too, and I'll kind of like just share this. You grow your business, you diversify. Your first step is your life insurance. Then you keep growing that. Then you might look at buying other businesses in your space, right? Or competitors. Or we had a client buy the real estate from which his business was operating from.
Mm.
It's another diversification strategy. Now he's got his business. He used his life insurance to buy the real estate that the business was operating from. There's 3 other tenants in that building, plus them is 4. So now there's a different income stream. And it's still he's one of the tenants, and his business is one of the tenants, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so now you've kind of diversified there. You maybe bought a competitor, you maybe bought a different business. You've got your banking system, which keeps growing every single year. And now you start to look at other areas that are of interest of you and that you know about. And the big part of this too, in a family office kind of strategy, the big part of all of this, and we didn't talk about that yet, and I just wanted to share that too, is you got to protect all of this. You don't want to build all of this stuff and somebody can just come in and you know,
Mhm.
take it, basically. Creditors, predators, whatever. You don't have to do anything wrong to get sued in the United States, right? So
Yeah.
you want to protect all of that stuff, and you also want to protect it even when you're not around. So the big part of this is asset protection and then estate planning. So what happens to all of this when, let's just say, you eventually pass away? What position will your family be in? Do they know how to deal with this? Do they have a team of advisors around them that know how to deal with this? I say this because I've also seen a ton of real estate guys that did so well, build out a massive portfolio, didn't have any planning past that. And now all of a sudden, the children are left with a massive portfolio and they're getting all these tax bills now.
Mm.
So then you got to sell off the real estate, which the dad or the mom, built up and took blood, sweat, and tears in their lifetime to acquire it. And now you got to sell that at a fire sale because you didn't plan, right? So there's a ton of planning that needs to be done around this kind of stuff too, that involves, proper tax, legal, and insurance structures.
Good to know. Sounds like there's a ton more that people need to come and listen to you talk about on the Cashflow Ninja podcast. Where else should people come to learn more? I mean, we've just barely scratched the surface, I can tell. You've introduced kind of the umbrella strategy, but there's so many different nuance and details in there that we need to learn. So yeah, best place to connect with you aside from the podcast.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Producerswealth.com is my company, producerswealth.com. We have a ton of stuff there, but for your listeners too, I wrote a book called Get Wealthy for Sure, the number one
Mhm.
financial strategy to multiply, the number one financial strategy for business owners to multiply wealth predictably. And we're giving away a free paperback copy. So you just pay for shipping and handling. So if you want to request a copy, just go to getwealthyforsure.com, getwealthyforsure.com. And in that book, it's about an hour read. I share, all this strategy and go into this much deeper, and even share the family office kind of strategy. So yeah, they can check us out at producerswealth.com, or just getwealthyforsure.com. There's also a link on that page, getwealthyforsure.com, to all of our presentations with different kind of strategies, and then also a link to book a call with myself and my team if you want to explore options and strategies for yourself and your family.
Cool. And then, guys, just so you know, in the show notes, we have a custom link that was created by your company, Producers Wealth, that is welcoming you guys. So it probably has access to all of those things that you just mentioned, MC. And so go check that out if you don't want to go type it in. We've got it linked right there in the show notes and on the blog. So I love it. Thank you so much. I love conversations like this. I think it's refreshing to hear. It's simple. Yes, there's a lot to it, and it can kind of make your head spin a little bit. But at the same time, there are so many smart ways that you need to be thinking. And I think we've heard this quite a few times from quite a few guests. There are so many alternative ways to create wealth and invest outside of the stock market, which is what most people lean to. So I appreciate you sharing all of this with us, being an open book. It's been so fun to chat with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And we'll see you on your podcast in a couple weeks. You guys go check that out too. We'll link to it, all the things. Thanks again, MC.
Thank you so much.